Hi guys, we're back, and tonight we're recording tonight because, as you guys know, we are all busy people, and I am here today with my dear friend Marc. Marc, all the way from Australia, but now living in Austin, but before living in LA where we met. So, hi Marc, how are you?
Lenka, hi. I'm so excited to be reunited with you. And even though it's, virtually, this is great to be able to collaborate with you. Thank you for
Yeah.
inviting me to be part of this.
Of course, you have so much to say on the subject that we are discussing here, which is how to become an online entrepreneur and make it a successful business, right? So I know when we met years ago, what was it, 3 or 4 years ago, you were not coaching yet. I want to really hear about your background, what brought you to the United States. You can speak about your former career because we introduced you in the Facebook group as an athlete. So tell us about that. And then what were the natural steps and the natural progress of things that took you where you are today? And what do you do today?
I'll give you the concise version if possible. Thank you, Lenka. So, as you said, yeah, former professional athlete. Rugby was my sport, and I grew up in Sydney, Australia. You can probably hear with my funny accent. And I actually played overseas as well. And I had a 12-year rugby career before it was ended tragically with a neck injury. So I broke my neck, and that ended my career. I was toward the end, which is I always feel blessed that I was able to play that long, and I was starting to consider retirement, but I still felt good enough to maybe play a couple more seasons at least before finally just finishing on my terms as well. Every athlete, I think, wants to finish on their own terms, go out on top, if you will. But as for many athletes, that's not always the case. And
Mhm.
I was no exception to that. So what I was faced with, Lenka, was okay, my rugby career is finished. And fortunately, I was able to make virtually a full 100% recovery from my neck injury, which again was a miracle. And I'll talk a little bit about what that meant for
Yeah.
what I'm doing now. Um, I may as well just tell you now that that was a defining moment of my life. Yes, I was faced with what do I do now? I hadn't really put a plan in place. I was just playing rugby, and I was starting to consider what was next and considering my interests and where I might even live, where to next. But when it happened, I was confronted with an identity crisis, I guess, of sorts. So, but more importantly, with the injury, I'm not religious, and I definitely wasn't religious at the time, not even very spiritual. However, when that injury happened and I was able to walk away, and especially when the surgeon told me that the injury happened so high up on my spinal cord that if it severed my spinal cord, which it didn't, fortunately, I could have died, let alone be a quadriplegic. So that news hit me pretty hard. And it was a profound moment of, I feel something divine. There's some divine intervention. Some greater power has decided this isn't my time. I've still got work to do. I've got a life to live. And the reason I'm explaining that is because that's what I connect to even to this day, that I really felt like I was given a second chance.
Mhm.
And as much as I'd had a great life and I feel like I was always a positive person, it forced me to reflect and be like, if this is your second chance from now on, how do I want to live that second chance? How do I want to make the most of this life that's to having it taken away from me? And in order to do that, I need to start with self-awareness and reflection. How have I been living my life up
Mhm.
until now? Um, Life is short, and I felt that it is not guaranteed. It is so fragile. So how now am I going to spend each and every day? And it's naturally the first thing is, what is my purpose? It's such a common sort of phrase that's used with people, but I really felt it, that
Yeah.
that is what I need to figure out, right? So what is my purpose? So in my recovery from my neck injury, considering what was next for me, I started looking at what am I interested in? What matters to me? What are my values now? Even just the concept of values. I'd never really sat down and thought about it properly. I had a sense of what they were and I knew what was important to me from time to time. But to actually be with myself and sit and reflect upon it, I'd never done before. So I embarked on this personal growth journey, firstly to help me because I did struggle originally. Like I had finished my career and I wasn't sure if my neck would fully recover. So I had to deal with those demons and I had to, that uncertainty, which so many people are going through right now with the pandemic. Well, I lived my own little version of that. Am I going to be able to handle not being that this rugby player anymore and all the perks that came with that? And I started drinking heavily. I wasn't a big drinker, but to help me with the anxiety and the onset of depression, I started to drink more and more, and I noticed that. And I was on the top of a slippery slope of a downward spiral because I was having an identity crisis, like I said. So fortunately, a teammate of mine, he saw me and saw that I needed support. And when we chatted one day at coffee over coffee, and I was just downloading because I felt safe to do that with him. He had this book in his little man satchel that he was halfway through, and he said, "Stop! You need this more than me right now. Give it back when you're done." And it was The Power of Now. And
Wow.
I'd never really read any self-help books or personal development books like that. But I needed that in that moment. He knew that, and I'm forever to this day grateful that he identified what I was going through and that book in that moment could really help me and bring me to the present moment. And it just, that was like a switch being flicked for me, and I was hooked. I read that book in 24 hours, right?
Wow.
And I've never read any book in 24 hours, not even a Dr. Seuss book, I don't think. So it was just because all the realizations, all the aha moments, I was like, wow, I learned so much about myself and my ego. So that led to more books, Lenka, right? I said I was hooked now. I'm really loving this learning about myself and reflecting on who I was and who I want to be and who I get to be. And books turned into workshops. And of course, that's where you and I met. We met at a leadership emotional intelligence workshop because I was on a journey and I was just like a sponge, give me more. So I gave you the long-winded version. So here in that journey, um, my purpose that I realized I do love helping and inspiring people. And I already acknowledged that even in my rugby career, I was kind of like the player that the young players like to come to ask for advice. And I already I had that in me, that sort of teacher, I guess, that mentor that really fired me up. And so I stuck with it. I'm like, well, that's what I know I love to do. And I'm learning so much about myself and the personal growth journey. And I know that a lot of athletes go through what I've just gone through, but I'm lucky that I am a self-starter in a way. Not all athletes can just dive in and go on that personal growth journey. So I get to be support. I get to use my story and help other athletes with what they're going through because they're not often provided that support. I had to do it myself. So what if I developed a program and convinced teams and organizations to give it to their players? Players and athletes could come to me one-on-one. So that's how it started. And that's when you and I met. I was like, this is my purpose. This is what I'm doing. And I wasn't an entrepreneur. This is like, I just know what I'm passionate about and I know what I have to do. And then I'll just figure out the rest. And here we are. Now I started Winning EQ as a platform to help primarily athletes, but then that pivoted into business because leadership coaching, especially athletes that have played and competed in a high performance, high pressure environment, businesses and corporations love to have athletes come in, former athletes come in and impart their experiences and knowledge on what makes a winning team culture. So now I've created this, you know, I help businesses, I help executives and leaders within companies, and I still remain passionate and committed to helping athletes as well. There we go, the long version.
That's
You can
a
edit some of that.
beautiful story. And what I heard you say is that you took what we call, you took your mess and you turned it into your message. And now, like, because it was your passion and because that's what your calling was, you didn't even think about business, but it turned into business. Because every time we come from the heart, every time we come from that inner fire inside of us, right, and we just give to people without any expectations, that's when the business comes in, the money comes in, and fame comes in, and all of that awesomeness comes in, right? So that's so beautiful and so powerful. You mentioned one thing, and I would like to clear this, make a clarification for our audience, because you mentioned emotional intelligence, and maybe some people might not know what that exactly means. Could you please tell us a little bit more about what that is, and what really do you focus on? What really do you get to help people with?
Absolutely. Emotional intelligence it's now somewhat of a buzzword, and it's being used more and more. And the best way I can describe it, a very simple definition, is it's the ability to identify and manage our own emotions and the emotions of others. So that's the simplest form. And then under the banner of emotional intelligence, there's self-awareness, which
Mhm.
I feel is probably the most important thing that I'm often coaching people on. First and foremost, self-awareness. And that is, again, self-awareness is being able to identify and express and articulate one's emotions. And then identifying in others helps with communication with others and relationships. And empathy is also another skill set, I guess, under the banner of emotional intelligence, which is something I'm also passionate about. Empathy, compassion.
Mhm.
So there's a number of different categories that fit within emotional intelligence. But like I said, that's the simplest form, being
Mm.
able to manage ourselves and manage others, which is even a shorter version that Dan Goleman, who is considered the godfather of emotional intelligence, his book by the same name actually made this phrase famous, and definitely in the business world. And like, I latched onto it. I'm like, yes, EQ, the emotional quotient.
Mhm.
More and more studies are showing that it's just as important, if not more important, than IQ when it comes to building teams, when it comes to success in corporations, and especially in sports.
What advice would you give to someone who is just getting started with their business, someone who is perhaps facing fears? How would they go about it? How do they get rid of those fears? How do they start believing in themselves, get the confidence? What's your advice for that?
So I'll say it again, self-awareness,
Hmm.
self-awareness. And what does that mean? That means obviously a number of things, but that is just start with a commitment to know thyself.
Mm-hmm.
What are your fears? Be honest with yourself and be willing to surrender to that and really dive in, put a mirror up to yourself and be like, all right, I'm ready and I'm prepared to get dirty, roll up my sleeves and learn as much about myself as I can. What are my deficiencies? What's important to me in this world? Just do a full sense check of yourself and take as much time as possible. That's what I did. I learned about myself and I was willing to do that. I was willing to be vulnerable and admit, and even admit it to others, that this is what hasn't been working for me in my life.
Mm.
This is what has been working for me in my life. If I want to live this way, if I want to achieve this goal, if I want to build this business, get clear on why you're doing it. And then that self-awareness piece of what is it about me that could possibly get in the way of me achieving that.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you need to get super clear, is like, what are my tendencies? Do I sabotage myself? Am I a procrastinator?
Yeah.
Like, just learn as much about yourself and your personality types and your, like I said, the habits that you have formed and the conditioning over the years from childhood that has got you to who you are today. Get clear on who you are before you then push forward. And that is emotional intelligence, for me anyway.
That's most of us do that. And I just want to make it clear for our audience that you guys are watching us speakers, giving you all these tips and advice and all that good stuff. And I know when I started, I was like that. I was looking up to people like who we are right now, the speakers, to you, right? Like I was like putting them on the pedestal almost. And I felt like they have no flaws, they have no fears. We do, you guys. We do the work.
Mhm.
We've been where you probably are right now, scared, to get started. But honestly, it's not that hard. You just, and if you are watching this summit, hopefully you're gonna get it, because this is only our second interview today. But um, you are going to see another 19, and hopefully by the end of March, you will have a very clear view on what it takes. And I hope you will understand you already have it in you. Okay, so that's why we're here. Mark, you mentioned few of the books that you read
Mm.
recently and that you loved. I know you wrote one too. Tell us about that one, because I know you want to give it away to our audience.
Yes, well, thank you, Linka.
Ah,
So it was, it's an ebook. It's a digestible
mhm,
ebook that, again, when the pandemic hit, and
mhm,
we all of us, I won't say we all, but I definitely uh, found myself with a lot of time on my hands and locked in inside my house. So again, one phrase that I like to obviously coach my clients is turning obstacles into opportunities. It's mindset. And there's even a book called "The Obstacle Is the Way" by Ryan Holiday,
mhm,
and that's an inspiring book for me. So, okay, I'm in this situation, and it sucks, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and everybody's talking about it. It's March, it's April 2020. What does this all mean? How long is this going to last? Will I lose my job? If I've lost my job, will I ever get another job? Am I going to be furloughed? I'm furloughed. When are we coming back? When are we going back to the office? How many more Zoom meetings do I have to do? All of these questions are going on. Now, fortunately for me, like I said in my story, Lenka, I'd been through a similar thing where I had uncertainty. What's next for me? Will my neck and the arm nerve damage in my arm ever get back to 100%? So I'd already built some resilience around that, and that self-awareness and the personal development to be able to deal with that.
mhm.
So when I got to this pandemic situation, I'm like, how can I create value based on what I already know, based on what I've been through? Because this feels very familiar to me, right? This uncertainty and transition of sorts and what's next. So I'm like, I'm going to use what I've been through, my story, and what I know and what I already coach people, and create a guide for people. And I call it the survival guide. And it's relevant to this situation because people, just like I was back in that day when I was lost and I was fearful, and I needed that book, The Power of Now. So I'm like, maybe I can create a book that's easy to read, that has some tangible steps, that has some resources as well, like really practical tips, and also a lot around the mindset of, okay, so you're in this now, follow these steps, and it'll help you not just through this large, uncertain, scary time, but anytime there's a breakdown, anytime that you feel, oh, I'm getting anxious again,
Yeah.
you can take these steps that I took to help me transition from sports into now what I do today,
Mhm.
living a full life. You too can do that right now. So it's called the survival guide because the way I figured is everyone's like in survival mode right now. Wouldn't you agree? And this was at the start of the pandemic, and that's when I created the book. But we're still in that. We are still kind of feeling burnout around this, and there's still these challenges of this weird and crazy world. So I made some tweaks to my survival guide because yes, we're in survival mode, but we can also thrive while we're in survival mode. It's It's possible. Like when things just seem to be falling down around you and the world's upside down and going crazy, we can still thrive. And many people and many businesses have proven that. So why should you be any exception? So that's my survival guide. You can survive and be in survival mode, and you can also thrive at the same time. And it's yours for free. I made some tweaks to make it more current. So in effect, it's a survival guide 2.0. And I'd love for everybody to have that as well, and just give you some relief and give you some tools like I was given when I was going through my crisis when I finished my rugby career.
There you go, you guys. Who wants the book? It's right below this video. So just click and download and consume and enjoy. Marc, thank you so much for your time today. I know you're super busy because you just got a brand new job, brand new gig that you are having right now with who?
So part of what I do is I'm giving back to the game of rugby. I'm still
Mm-hmm.
involved with rugby because I realize it gave me so much, and I do love the sport. And I've become a broadcaster as well. So aside from my leadership coaching, I'm also involved in the media side of things, and I coach athletes as well on how to deal with the media and make the most of the opportunities. And through that and through commentating for rugby, I've landed a role with Fox Sports. It will be covered on CBS as well and ESPN. It's a pretty big deal. Rugby's just gone professional in America,
Yeah.
so I'm super honored and really excited to be given a co-hosting role of the weekly show that'll talk all about rugby in America. Keep an eye out for that as well. But yeah, everything's starting. The season's kicking off in 2 weeks, so all the prep work. It's there's a lot going on, but I'm so grateful for it.
All right, you guys. So this is not the last time you see Marc. You'll see his handsome face every day, every week, every very often on your TV, whatever channel you wanna turn on. That's where he will be. Thank you, Marc. We appreciate you, and to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you tomorrow with another beautiful episode. Stay tuned. It's gonna be awesome.